All right, class. Welcome to the next semester, semester number 2, Biology 178, Anatomy and Physiology 2 for kinesiology majors. Um, you all, I'm sure, remember me. I'm your professor, Dr. Brian Khan Quintana, and I'm going to be your professor for the lecture portion of the course. And then for some of you, I'll probably also be your professor for a lab as well. If you don't have me, then you'll have either, I believe it's going to be Professor Saima or Professor Yasin. Um, so let's go ahead and get right into the orientation here. Things are going to be pretty similar to how they were in the previous semester. So if we log on to the course shell here, to the Canvas course, the first thing that we can click on here is general info, and this will give you some general info. So again, I'm going to be your lecture professor. Here's my contact information, and then my office hour information. So I'm going to be available for office hours virtually by appointment Fridays from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay, so if you want to meet with me for office hours, make sure that you send me an email or you talk to me after class and you confirm with me an appointment during the office hours. Again, I'm going to hold that every Friday from 7 to 8. And then just keep in mind, the appointments shouldn't go on for too much time, maybe no more than about 10 minutes, 15 minutes max for each student, because we have classes of a very large amount of students so that everybody has the ability to meet up with me if that's what they need. As always, you can also, if it's something very quick, just like a question that takes a minute, all the way up to 5 minutes or so, you can talk to me after class as well. But if it's anything that's going to require anything longer than that, um, then we should probably set up an appointment via office hours. And I do want to keep track of everything. So let's go ahead and make sure that we schedule you if you want to meet for an office hour session. The next thing that we'll go on to here is the syllabus. So for the syllabus here, we're going to click on it and it should take you to the syllabus. Now, this is tentative, meaning that we might make updates, we might make changes. So I recommend that you don't really download it and print it. Um, I would say that if you need to review it, maybe get it online, so that you have the newest version. So you might notice that a couple things here have changed as far as the syllabus goes from the previous semester to this semester. So we have the basic information. We're basically starting from 122 all the way to 510, 2024. So again, I'm going to be the lecture professor. My email address is here, bquintana@csusm.edu. So again, the class is really large. Each class, I believe at this point, is at about 100 students, and I'm teaching two of these kinesiology classes apart from another nursing program class. So it takes time to get to your emails. So expect a turnaround time for emails for between 3 to 5 days. Okay. Um, Now I'm going to try something new. So this might get like a quicker turnaround time. We'll see how it goes. Um, if you have like a quick question that doesn't require too much investigation, doesn't require too much into it, um, you can message me via Teams. So I'm going to install Teams. I've already done it. I've installed Teams on my phone. Um, so I should get the message, right? Like I should get the message directly to the Teams app. And if it's just like a quick question or whatever, I should be able to get back to it really quickly. Um, so we'll try that out as well to see if how that works. Okay. That's kind of like a beta program, I guess you can say. So we'll see how that goes as far as like turnaround times for getting back to you on that. But let's give it a try. If you know of another method that other professors use that also works, besides email or Teams, let me know, and maybe we'll be able to set something up. Okay, send me an email or a message via Teams if you know something else that might help. And then again, office hours, virtual by appointment, Fridays from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. So our lecture hours, like I mentioned, there are two groups that I'm teaching. You're either going to fall on the Tuesday, Thursday group, 10:30 a.m. to 11:45 p.m. We're going to be meeting at Academic Hall 304, or it'll be the Tuesday, Thursday group. You'll be part of that group. 5:30 to 6:45, Academic Hall 102. And then for the lab hours, as far as if you have me for lab as well, we're going to be meeting in Science Hall 102, and we'll be meeting Tuesdays, 1:30 to 4:20. And then if you're part of the other group, it'll be Wednesdays from 11:30 to 2:20. Now just keep in mind, you're not to go to all of these meetings. Remember, you're either or. So you're either between one of these lecture classes or between one of these lab classes. Okay. All right. The textbook material, same as last time. We've got anatomy and physiology. This is that free one from OpenStax, and you can download that one. You should already actually have that one from last semester. And then we have the Fundamental of Anatomy and Physiology by Eric Bleckberg. That was the ebook that you downloaded. It's another good resource. You've got the Photographic Atlas of Anatomy and Physiology. Okay, that's also from last semester. And then this one is a new one. Okay. So we'll talk about this new one in a minute. But about these other ones here, like I mentioned, you should have them already. And I'm not going to particularly, and here's the side note here. I'm not going to particularly assign reading assignments from the online textbook. The textbook is basically there as a resource to designed to expand upon your concepts that we covered in class, that we covered in lecture. Okay, so I'm not going to assign reading. I'm not going to say, okay, this day you should read this and this. But you should, by yourself, before class perhaps, read the chapter on the subject that we're covering so that you have a basic understanding of it before coming into class. And then maybe you can read this one after class, after you've actually seen the subject. And, that will help you to make sure that you understood the concepts that you were supposed to understand. Okay, and then we have the Photographic Atlas of Anatomy and Physiology. This was the book that had a lot of photos in it. Remember, that's a great resource to have for lab, and it's also a great companion for lecture as well. So the atlas is to be used to study various anatomy models. You can study cadavers. There's some histology slides on there. Again, it's a valuable resource. No assignments, though, are going to come directly from this book. Okay, the atlas. Now going back to this new one here. So this is not required for you to purchase, but it's recommended. Okay, now this is the Laboratory Investigations in Anatomy and Physiology, and it's important that if you do decide to purchase it, that you get the pig edition. There's also a cat edition, but we're going to be dissecting a fetal pig. So it's important that you get the pig edition. Okay, and this one's by Stefan Sarikas. Okay, so it's optional. However, we will be doing some work that correlates to this lab book. So it's in your best interest, if you really want to understand the material fully, that you consider purchasing this lab book. For the important topics that correlate to the lab books, I'll be providing those. Okay. All right. Right. So we're down here, the course objectives. This is the second in a two-course series designed to introduce the principles of anatomy and physiology for students in health and human services, including nursing. In your all case, it's kinesiology. This is taught from a systems perspective where students will learn the basic physiological principles and mechanisms along with their associated anatomical bases. Materials include nervous system and senses, and the endocrine, reproductive, cardiovascular, and respiratory systems. So those are the systems that we're going to be covering in this semester. Right. So we have our course learning outcomes. So again, it's important that we have you able to demonstrate knowledge and understanding of some of the major human organ systems, including the mechanism of signal transduction in the endocrine system, describe the physiology of the cardiovascular system, including pressure volume relationship in the heart, as well as cardiac output, blood flow, and blood pressure physiology. Identify the function of blood components and their composition. Also, the value of human blood groups. Describe the functioning of the lymphatic and immune system. Describe the physiology of the respiratory system, including gas laws. And I'll let you all kind of read through the rest. Okay, so just some basic understandings that you'll learn throughout the course there. Okay, again, we're going to be using the Kura core system, which is the system that we're using now, to show you how the course is going to flow. Grading is based solely on performance and exams and assignments. This semester, it's a little bit different, the grading system, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Okay, but it's mostly going to be on exams and assignments, as you'll see. Grades are going to be determined by percentages of total points accumulated during the semester. Points are earned through exams, quizzes, laboratory practicums, lab assignments, and lab reports. And you're going to receive one combined lecture laboratory grade for the course. And the total amount of points possible between the lecture and the lab is going to be a total of 1,300. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit. All right, so the exam policies, I'll let you all read through those. Those are pretty straightforward. No phones are allowed. Make sure that you use the restroom beforehand. If it's an emergency and you really need to go to the restroom, you're expected to like leave your phone and your exam with me. And then when you come back, I'll give them back to you. So all those rules are here. And then again, makeup exams are offered only under extreme circumstances, and verification of the reason for the absence that was required. So like a doctor's note, something like that. And again, I reserve the right to modify this makeup policy. And very, very important, there's no makeup for the lab practical exams. Those can't be made up. And then here's a little side note here. Please try to use good penmanship. Last semester, it was difficult on some of your papers, on some of your quizzes to read some of those answers. So make sure that you have proper penmanship. So just as before, there's going to be a short lecture quiz at the beginning of each lab session that covers lecture material from the previous week. And then you can also always refer to the calendar for specific lectures that we're covering on a week-by-week basis. Each quiz is going to be worth 10 points. We're going to have a total of 10 quizzes. And again, 10 quizzes at 10 points each. Quizzes can only be made up under extreme circumstances, and you must have prior instructor approval to make one of those quizzes up. There will also be an additional 10 quizzes that need to be completed at home as well. So this is a little bit different this time around. So we're going to be having 10 quizzes that we'll complete at the beginning of the lab session, and then there'll be an additional 10 quizzes that you'll do at home. Okay, and those are also going to be worth 10 points. Okay, now a little bit more about the lab here. So evaluation of the laboratory portion of the course is going to be based on the lab practicums. So we're going to be having 2 lab practicums, just like we had last semester. Each one of those are worth 200 points each. And you'll also be having some lab review exercises and some lab assignments and such. So we're going to be having a total of 20 of those this time around. And those are going to be worth 10 points each. And then, like I already mentioned, part of the grading of the lab are going to be lab quizzes that you're going to be taking at home. So that's what I was talking about back here. Okay, so that's going to be falling under the lab portion. Okay, technically. Okay, and then you also have your lab practicals. This is an explanation of what the lab practical is. Everyone has already taken 2 of those, so you know what those are about. Okay. All right, so late assignments, lab exercises, and lab reports must be turned in on time. No late material for the lab will be accepted for credit. So whenever we have an assignment that appears on the course calendar, it's going to be due no later than the Sunday of the week that it was assigned. Okay, so if it's 11:58 Sunday night and it's not complete, and then all of a sudden, it's 2:10 in the morning, Monday morning, it's not going to be accepted. So make sure that you're turning it in no later than the Sunday of the week that it was assigned. And we'll go through the class calendar in just a bit to show you a little bit more about that. All right, so some more basic info here. I'll let you all read that on your own. On attendance. So attendance is expected, but as you probably noticed last semester, for um, for the lecture, I don't take attendance. And then also for the lab, technically we don't take attendance. You probably noticed, I don't know about your specific lab professor, if they do something different, but I typically don't. You're all in university, so we don't need to be doing that. Everyone's responsible for what they do. But if you miss something because of being absent, then you're going to lose the points on that. Okay. All of these other things, all of these other rules, again, we reserve the right. Okay, if you've missed 3 or more labs without clearing it with your instructor, you'll receive a failing grade. So we reserve the right, but again, just be responsible and mature. That's what I'm trying to say here. All right. So it's gonna go ahead and move down here. Don't be tardy, don't be absent, don't use your cell phones in class, don't cheat. Okay, so let you all read through that. Attendance again. And then, about credit hour policy. Remember that per unit at home, you should be studying a minimum of 2 hours. Okay, per week, per unit. Okay, so how many units is this class worth? You multiply that by 2. Okay. And that's how much you should be doing per week. So what I believe the course for the lecture portion, it's like 4 units, right? So there you go. So you should be doing a lot of studying at home as well. Late work, like we said, in principle is not accepted. Okay, only in extreme circumstances. Extra credit. this time around, I'm going to be offering a little bit more structured extra credit. I'm not really looking to, just throw like free extra credit here or there, kind of like how I did it last time. Um, this time around, what we're doing is uh, a different system for the extra credit. Okay, and I'll explain that a little bit later. All right, so the makeup policy, like we said, only in extreme circumstances when you have a valid excuse. Okay, some more information on students with disabilities, plagiarism not accepted, ethics. All right, make sure that your electronic devices are on silent. Okay, no offensive comments, or language or gestures in class. All right, and then some advice for success. So every student has a way to learn best. Each student learns differently. Okay, so try to find yours. Okay, this is an accelerated and intense course. My advice is to work ahead, study in groups for the lab and the lecture. If you're sick, ask for a classmate to pass a copy of their notes to you. Read the PowerPoint lectures. Read the book to understand the concepts. Memorization doesn't cut it. Okay, so um, there's too much material to learn here, so you have to actually learn it. Okay, use the available tools according to your study style. Um, you can use flashcards, YouTube videos, uh, whatever kind of helps you to excel at the program. Okay, like I mentioned, the books that I've recommended on the syllabus, those should be enough. But if you find yourself needing more material, I always say there's so much material that you can find online. So um, I've also added this little website here. You might find that useful as well. Okay. All right. Now here is the grading policy. So as you can see, as far as the scaling goes for the grading, the lecture portion is very straightforward. For the lecture portion, we're going to have a total of 4 exams. Okay, those are going to be worth 100 points each. Okay, for a total of 400 points possible. And then for those lecture quizzes that you're taking at the beginning of the lab period, um, you will be taking uh, 10 of those at 20 points each. And those will be worth a total of 200 points. So if we combine the two, we get 600 total possible points for the lecture. For the lab, we're going to have 2 lab practicals at 200 points each. So that should give us a total of 400. For the lab exercises, we said that there's going to be a total of 20 of those worth 10 points each, total of 200. And then for the lab quizzes that you'll be taking online, there'll be 10 of those, 10 points each. So that's another additional 100 points. That gives us a total of 700. So we'll add the two together, and in the whole class, in the whole program, there's a total of 1,300 points that you can get. Okay. Now, grades are going to be calculated based on the total points accumulated during the course. To know your grade at any given time, simply add the points earned and the figure and figure out the percentage. Um, so again, uh, if you have 1,200 points, 1,200 divided by 1,300, and it should give you an idea of where you stand. Okay. Regardless of the total points, you must take all lecture and lab exams. You're not going to be allowed to pass the course if not all your exams have been taken. All right, and then the last thing that we have here is the grading scale. So based on the percentage that you end up getting, this is where your grade will fall. And again, a C or above is passing. Okay, anything below a C would be a fail. Okay, and that is basically the syllabus. Okay, let's move on to the class calendar here. All right, so for the class calendar, you can see everything is going to be organized by weeks. And then again, as a reminder, assignments or labs or anything that we have assigned to you are due no later than the Sunday of the same week that they're assigned. Okay, so for week 1, which is the week that we're in here, that that we're on right now, usually, if it wasn't for the strange situation that we had, usually this would be due at the end um of this week, right? But because of the situation with the strike and everything, as I mentioned in the previous email, we're going to go ahead and push that out to the end of next Sunday. Okay, so the work that is going to be assigned for both week 1 and week 2, those are going to be due at the end of not this week, not this Sunday, but they'll be due at the very latest by next Sunday. Okay, so week 1, what we're covering here. Gross anatomy of the spinal cord, the spinal nerves, and then for lecture 2, it's going to be spinal nerves and spinal reflexes. This is what's going to be covered in lecture. For lab, there's the safety sheets, and hopefully everybody already reviewed the video that I sent out to you all for the lab safety, and then be prepared when you go into lab next week to sign those agreements just like you did last semester. Okay, and then you'll be covering spinal cord and spinal nerves. And then here you have one of those first assignments that I mentioned earlier, which is the Sarika's 15. And then you have to cover the models of the spinal cord and the nervous system. You're going to cover some histology slides through the microscope, 15 through 18. And then there's the Sarika's exercise 15 supplement as well. So what are the assignments that are due? Just to clarify, that's what we're looking at here. No later than Sunday, you need to turn in Sarika's exercise 15 and the supplemental worksheet. Okay, now you might be wondering, where am I going to find these? I'll show you momentarily, okay? For week 2, so this is next week when we're actually going to be meeting on campus. This is what will be expected during week 2. And then what we'll probably end up doing is, like I mentioned, since we haven't really covered any of the material for the quiz, we'll probably push the quiz out to week 3, where where you're going to take both of these quizzes, most likely on week 3. Okay, so for week 2, you're going to be covering lecture 3, sensory systems, general olfaction and taste. For lecture 4, it's going to be special senses, hearing, and equilibrium. During the lab, like I mentioned, normally we would have been doing the first quiz, but we're going to push that out as well. And we would be doing the reflexes and sensations, do Sarika's exercise 16. This is the lab that you would be doing, the lab activity that you'd be actually doing in class. This is another lab activity that you'd be doing in class. And then this is what would be due at the end of that week. Okay. Now, again, I want to remind everybody, because of the whole strange situation with scheduling and such, we're saying that the lab has been canceled for this week. So during week 2, we're going to be covering this material and this material. Okay. And the quiz that we were supposed to have will be pushed out to week 3. And for week 3, most likely we will be taking two quizzes. Okay. And then we should, at that point, return back to our normal schedule, okay, of turning things in. So for week 3, when you get here and you've done those 2 quizzes, you're going to do this lab, and then this material will be due at no later than Sunday of week 3. Okay, and you can see that that's just the way that the class will flow. So week by week, everything is here on the calendar. I've kind of color coded some things to help kind of stick them out. So when there's a quiz, it's usually outlined here in green. And then if we move all the way down to week 5, okay, finally during week 5, you're going to have the first lecture exam, which is going to cover lectures 1 through 8. And then for the second lecture day that we have during the week, we would be going into lecture 9 for hematology. Okay, so just to point that out, this would be during week 5, our first lecture exam. Okay, and then you'll also notice that there's another color here, which is the blue color. This is when the first online quiz would open up. Okay, and this is when the first online quiz you would need to take it. It would be the day that that you have your lab in class. Sometime during that day, take that quiz. Okay, and then again the Sarika's exercises, and then to help remind you which assignments are due, I've put them here at the end. Okay, so as you can see, it's very, very organized. It's very straightforward, very easy to follow, and very easy to read. So use this to help you out in understanding where we're at in the class and what's due. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea. All the way on week 8, during lab, you'll be having the first lab practical. Week 9 is considered spring break. Lecture exam number 2 would be during week 10. Okay, and then so on and so forth. Okay, all right. And then for the final, for the lecture final, there's a specific day that one is assigned on, and I'll give that day a little bit later. Okay, so that is the calendar there. All right, so let's go ahead and move back to the Cougar course. So if we click back on home, we've already seen these first few links, and finally we're here under week 1. And again, you can have your calendar out to kind of help you to understand, what we're covering class by class. But as you can see here, for week 1, during the for this whole like block, the lab and the lecture have been combined, just like it was during last semester. For the lecture for week 1, we're going to be covering the spinal cord and spinal nerves. And then for the second day of lecture, it's going to be spinal nerves and reflexes. Okay, now you might be wondering what we're planning to do for these 2 lectures. So I'm going to be sending an additional recording of these lectures instead of having you all come into class. Like I informed you all via email about that, but just as a reminder. So I'll send that out soon, the recording. I might end up just recording both of them and sending them out on Thursday. But just, be on the lookout for those recordings, okay? For the lectures, lecture 1 and 2. And then for the lab, like we mentioned, this is all of the material that you would be covering for the lab. I recommend clicking through all of this, getting familiar with everything. And yeah, and just familiarizing yourselves by clicking through all the links. There's a lot of good material here that can help you study and help you learn the material that you need to master. And then about those Sarika exercises that we mentioned earlier, this is where you find them. So you would just click on this, and then the Sarika's exercise would download, and you would complete it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to open up a Turnitin link where you can just turn these assignments in directly to get credit for them. In the meantime, if I don't get to that soon, the way that you'll be turning those in is that you'll be emailing them to your lab professor. Okay, all these lab assignments. Okay, so just keep in mind, once again, the material that we're covering for this week, we're going to push over into next week. And we're going to be covering this and this during next week's lab. So if you want to, read a little bit ahead, to familiarize yourselves, that's fine. Otherwise, just wait for the recordings of the lectures that I'm going to be sending out soon. Okay. One thing that I do recommend that you do before coming into lab next week is click on these first links that talk about like an overview of what we're covering during the class, because sometimes it tells you to print certain things out. Sometimes I'll have you like print something and bring it to class. So be sure that you read through all this and you bring or print anything that you need to. Okay. All right. So, lecture 3 and 4, and then the material for the lab, like we mentioned, and then just be prepared to take quiz 1 and 2 during next week's lab. Okay. All right. So that's the Cougar course here. So you can kind of familiarize yourselves with all of the work and the organization, but I think it's pretty straightforward. Now, for those online quizzes, be on the lookout for those. These are the online quizzes. So you can click on quizzes and they'll appear here. But as you can see, um, they they open on specific dates. So you have to wait until those specific dates before taking them. Okay. All right. All right. Well, that's basically um, the introduction, the orientation. If you have any questions for me, feel free to send me a message via Teams so that we can start trying that out, or send me an email. If I start getting a lot of the same questions, then what I might end up doing is just, answer you all via an announcement. Okay. And like I mentioned, the lecture 1 and 2, I'll be recording those and sending you a recording for those a little bit later. Okay. Probably by Thursday. You'll have both of these. Okay. All right. I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. And again, if you have any questions, please reach out, and hope to see you all soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.